Mayor Martini, Council Members Ratty, Lawson, Smith, Bybee, Schmidt, City Attorney Adams, City Manager Driscoll.
Here.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you. Like to be. Would you bow with me just to offer a prayer? And so, our Heavenly Father, we do come to you and ask you to bless today. We are so thankful that we could gather together and do Sparks City business. We pray you'd be involved in the business. Lord, bless all of our school children and our teachers as they go back to school today. Just pray that it would be a great school year, and we ask for your safety to envelop them. We thank you too, Lord, for all of our military, and ask that you would be with every military personnel as well. Lord, we ask that you might touch Mayor Gino's back and give him the healing that he so needs today. Would you indeed give each member the wisdom that they need for all of the things on the docket this day? And we thank and praise you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I feel better already, Barb. Thank you. Okay, if you'd all remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, Mr. Schmidt, would you lead us?
Yes, Mayor. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor. Good to see you.
Okay, next is public comment. I do have some public comment cards. If you want to speak under number 4, public comment, please fill out one of these speaker cards and we'll get you on for 3 minutes. I have Garth Elliott.
I'm not used to sitting, but we'll do that. It's a long ways from me to the ground. For the record, Garth Elliott. I have a long connection with Sparks. My family in the 60s was the first operators of a 7-Eleven in the city of Sparks. We had the one on Greenbrae. So I cut my working tooth on running the 7-Eleven, and it's not for the faint of heart, let me tell you. It's interesting to note that your first order of business was an invocation to our Heavenly Father. Well, guess what? Our Heavenly Father is responsible for feral cats, isn't he? And I'm not a lover of feral cats, and I'm taking this time here, plus hopefully a little later, talking to you about feral cats. They are a nuisance. They don't belong. Cats do not belong loose in our environment, but they are, aren't they? And sometimes in great numbers. But Gandhi made an interesting, he talked a lot about animals, but he said, you'll know a society on how they treat their animals. And what you're about to do today and finish in a month or so is going to do something very nasty to feral cats. We have a plan in effect right now with feral cats. It's called Trap, Neuter, and Release. And it's working. It's working very good. I know this because I've been monitoring it for 5 or 6 years now on the intake of the Humane Society and the Animal Control on how many little kittens they get this time of year. And it's way, way down, and that includes kittens from the feral cats. The most cost-effective way to deal with feral cats is not to herd them up and do a mass murdering. And that's the result of what's going to happen if you continue on your course of zoning out feral cats in the city of Sparks. You need to kind of do the steps to see the end result, and that's what will happen. We'll be back to the 15 years ago or 20 years ago when we used to kill cats by the gaylord full and take them out to the landfill and bury them. And that's the steps that you're going to start by this enaction of this zoning change. We need to let not necessarily nature take its course, but don't reinvent the wheel. It's working. Trap, neuter, release is effective, cost-effective way of dealing with the problem. You trap animals in their neighborhood, you neuter them, release them, they don't breed anymore, and you don't create a vacuum. And most people don't know about the vacuum effect. Go to YouTube, look it up. You take a bunch of animals out of an area, guess what? A bunch of other animals, cats, feral cats, come on in to take advantage of the good eats and the good living that was provided for them. So don't create a vacuum to be filled by unneutered animals. Again, I can only reemphasize this as many times as I've got time for. It works. Trap, neuter, release does work. I've done research all the way from Europe to here on YouTube and looked at the problem in Florida and Chicago, San Francisco,
Wrap it up, Garth.
it works. Thank you for your time.
Richard Simmons?
Good morning, Mayor Martini and council members. For the record, my name is Dr. Richard Simmons. I'm a licensed veterinarian in the state of Nevada. And most of you know me, and I'm speaking for myself today, not for any of the organizations with which I'm associated. Unfortunately, I have another commitment that's going to preclude me from being here when you hear agenda items 9.2 and 9.4. So I'd like to make some very brief comments, and I've submitted written documentation that backs up what I'm saying. On 9.2, since I've been here before to advocate against the changes in the Washoe County Code, I thought it only fair to come here and say I essentially support 9.2. And so that's all I'm going to say about that. I think the insurance requirements are a little high, but overall I support it. Agenda item 9.4, I'm here to support the proposed change in the planning, Sparks Planning document sections 20.03.005 to prohibit feral cat colonies. One of my objections, besides those you will hear and have heard relative to the damage that feral cats do and the public health issues, is the fact that Washoe County Code paragraph 55.390 requires individual citizens in the county who wish to keep more than 7 cats at home to object. There's a process by which neighbors are informed of an application for a cattery permit. And if they object, that objection is brought to the Washoe County Animal Control Board for a hearing and a determination. If the determination is negative or even positive, the affronted party can go to the district court to appeal it. So there's a mechanism for people to object. There are absolutely no mechanisms applying to feral cat colonies that allow the people impacted by the feral cat colony to object and to resolve that. In regards to cost effectiveness, regardless of cost effectiveness, if the significant public health hazards and the other damage to native wildlife, that should be taken into account also. And it is a significant public health hazard. And thank you very much for your attention. I'll answer any questions anybody wishes to make them.
Okay.
Hearing none.
Thanks, Doctor. Well, this is not a question and answer time, Doctor. This is just public comment, so thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, we have 2 items that were tabled. Chet, what do we do to take these off the table? Yes, from 27th.
Motion to table would motion to have the items brought back.
So we don't have to act upon these now?
No, you
bring them back.
You bring them back, and then you can act on them.
Okay.
They can add it at the end of the agenda.
Discretion of the council.
I think they're on the agenda.
So,
Oh, right, they're on the agenda already. Is there public comment now and then they come later on the agenda, or do you have public comment during that? They're later on the agenda.
yeah.
Okay, public comment now can be on anything on the agenda. or anything that
Yeah.
the city council has jurisdiction over.
Not specific to these, no.
It could be specific to whatever you want on your public comment, but if you have the agenda items, then you can certainly open it up at the mayor's discretion for public comment on those particular agenda items.
Okay. So, these are on the agenda. They're agendized as a public hearing, so we can have public comment at that time. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Okay. So everybody okay with moving on?
Well, I signed up for this public comment, so what can I do?
No, you didn't. You signed up for 9.4. But you can come up and do this,
Because I don't mind waiting.
yeah, it says 9.4.
Okay, that was my mistake.
So if you want to comment now too, you may do that, and then I'll put you down here as doing it under number 4 also.
It wasn't Teresa's, it was my fault. I didn't understand the question. I have
Okay, you
toxoplasmosis.
go right ahead, Ardina. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. For the record, Ardina Perry. It was touched upon that nobody's representing the people that are impacted by feeding, and I want to use feeding in a general way. I gave you a little handout because I can't read fast enough with CHF, but you'll see on the little handout, which I would like to have put in the record. I don't know where I ask for that.
Yeah, you can just give that to the clerk and it'll get in the record.
It's to you, okay. You know, a few years ago, a neighbor of ours started feeding, and we tried all the usual things that you go through when somebody's doing that kind of behavior. And Ron used to live in our neighborhood. He knows we got a lot of open land back there, and we've had different occasions where people have chosen to use the open land for feeding. And the one poor people wiped out their koi pond. In my case, my dog died. And that was, to me, a point where I went down and confronted the person and said, look, it's enough. It's enough. You know, I've got, and I'll go back to the text so that I don't ramble. We talked to this neighbor for years trying to get him to see reason. He said not to worry about the dead rats and the water accent. That was part of nature. He poisoned them. Okay. He asked me what I had against raccoons, marmots, coyotes, bull snakes, and pack rats who were native to the desert. I explained to him my problem was they were dying in my garden accent, and the raccoons were eating my koi fish. Okay. We also had cats eating the koi fish. Shortly after Christmas, a couple of years ago, our little girl got very sick, and we took her straight to the vet. In less than 7 weeks, with 6 vets and almost $4,000, she died. They have no idea what hit her. It was obviously some zoonotic thing that no dog would normally ever come in contact with in their own backyard. So I come to you today with experience in what it's like to live near a person who is doing this type of attracting of wildlife. We had pack rats, we had raccoons, we had marmots, we had coyotes, we had bull snakes, we had lots and lots of bunnies, we had lots and lots of squirrels. And my garden was devastated, and when I lost my dog, I went down and I just said, hey, stop. Stop. The dog is dead. I don't mind the $4,000. I mind the dog. And he said, it's legal. It should not be legal for any parcel owner to commit upon any parcel in the city of Sparks a devastating land use that impacts the neighbors in that way. And right now, we have absolutely nothing. That's what this sheet of paper is. We have nothing, county or state, to protect people like myself who are living with this. Thank you.
Thanks,
I hope
Ardina.
your back's better, Gino.
Pardon me? It
Hope
will
your
be.
back
Thank you.
gets better, huh?
Okay, David Catalano. You have 3 minutes, David.
All righty. For the record, my name is David Catalano with the Nevada Department of Wildlife. I'm a state supervising wildlife biologist. We'd like to thank for the opportunity to submit public comment to the Sparks City Council today. The Nevada Department of Wildlife is very concerned about the effects of feral cats on native wildlife communities, both from predation as well as from disease transmission. With over 90 million cats throughout the country, they are killing and consuming roughly 22 billion birds and mammals annually. The Department of Wildlife is just concerned with what's going on, throughout the entire state. So, that's it.
Okay. Short and sweet. Thank you, sir. Anyone else under public comment? Okay. Andrea Murray.
I was told this was going to be last on the agenda. You're lucky I'm here.
Well, it is last on the agenda.
Oh, is it? You're already
Well,
done?
it's not going to be last, but there will be some later
okay,
on.
Okay.
So,
My name is Andrew Murray, and I am a resident of Sparks for 30 years and a resident of Reno for 40 years before that. For the last 10 years, I have been volunteering at the Nevada Humane Society. And when I saw this documentation come up about changing zoning for feral cats, you'll have to excuse me, I'm a little nervous. I was quite concerned because at the Humane Society, as you know, we have a trap, neuter, release program. And that program has been in place for several years now. I started with the Humane Society right when they went on as a no-kill shelter. And we are having great success in reducing the number of feral cats by trapping them, neutering them, being sure they're healthy. They snip a little part of the ear off so that we know they have been captured, and then we re-release them into the area where they live. This keeps those animals from reproducing, and slowly but surely those colonies die out. And if you stop this practice, first of all, if you stop us from doing the trap and release, we will lose over $1.5 million in funding as a no-kill shelter. So that is a real concern to us. The second thing is, if you won't let us continue this program by saying that it's against the law to feed these cats and take care of them, those animals are still going to reproduce, and you're going to wind up with more feral cats than you did before you passed this law, making people that were concerned about animals criminals. And I know that there's been a lot of literature published on this already. And the one thing that I just want to comment on was since 2005, we took in 6,800 cats. In 2005, we took in 68 cats, 6,800. In 2014, we took in 3,900. So the program is working. And I ask that you please consider not changing this law so that we can continue what we're doing and be successful at it and be very humane. Thank you very much.
thank you. Joel, now it says here you want to speak on 9.2 and 9.4 that you're against. Do you want to speak now, or do you want to speak on 9? It says 9.2, which is not about feral cats.
Okay, well, I want to speak about feral cats.
Okay, go ahead.
My name is Joel Blakesley. I'm with the Coalition for Nevada's Wildlife. It's a group of sportsmen's organizations, and we have a problem with the feral cat colonies and their effects on the native wildlife that inhabit Sparks and the other areas, especially along the river. You've got ducks that try and raise nests down there, geese that try and raise nests down there. You've got any number of small animals, songbirds. I'm sure you've heard about the American Bird Conservancy efforts and the Audubon Society and the effects that these animals have on the native wildlife. You've got the disease issue. Toxoplasmosis is a waterborne disease that feral cats introduce into the waterways, and that kills native animals like mink and muskrats and native small mammals. you've got a big disease potential. You've got 70-some thousand bats under the bridge down there on McCarran on the river. I've heard that there has been rabies in those detected recently. You've got the potential to spread that throughout the country. I know they get vaccinated, but I understand rabies vaccines don't last forever. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But anyway, we would like to see you ban the feral cat colonies in the city of Sparks. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, anyone else? Okay, moving on to approval of the agenda. Anybody want to take anything out of order? If not, looking for a motion. Yes.
We need to do formal action to take the 2 items off the table and put them on the agenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, can I get a motion then by Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I move
Didn't see your name
to
there.
take off the table and bring back to this council meeting later on the agenda the 2 items we tabled 2 weeks ago.
10-1 and 10-2. Do
Mm-hmm.
you have a second? Ms. Bybee.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Smith, seconded by Councilman Bybee to take from the table agenda items 10.1 and 10.2 that we took off the last meeting. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Ron Schmidt. Oh, he's gone. Okay. Please display. Passes unanimously with 1 not voting. Okay. Now, approval of the agenda. Anyone want to take anything out of order? Okay, looking for a motion. Ms. Bybee.
Actually, I'd like to take something out of order.
Okay.
Can we move item number 9.4 to the end of the meeting?
If that's your wish, we can do that. So that would make it after 11.1? Anybody have a problem with that?
Just let's move 9.2 back since they're semi-compatible.
Moving both back.
Move them both back to the end.
Okay, 9.2 and 9.4 after 11.1, okay.
And I'll second it on that.
I'd be okay.
Is that all right?
Yes, I'd be okay to that
Thank you.
motion.
Okay, anyone else?
So I was going to actually head you just beat me to the buzzer. Ms. Bybee, I was going to actually head the other direction and suggest that we bring 9.4 to the front end of the agenda. I think folks may not understand that it's just a first reading and that we're not going to take any action on it today. And so there's no staff testimony, there's no anything that happens on it today. We could read it, let people go home, and then move on with the rest of the agenda.
Well,
9.2 is an action item.
I'm sorry, I meant 9.4, but my apologies, 9.4.
Well, we have a motion on the floor right
So
now.
that's my
and-
discussion.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second on moving 9.2 and 9.4 to the end of the meeting.
More discussion.
Go ahead.
Actually, I would be agreeable to that because it is no action being taken on 9.4, so I would agree that 9.4 could be simply read now since no further action will happen, and then we could move, Ron, Ed, do you still want 9.2 at the end?
Yes. That would
Okay.
be fine. Or we
Okay.
leave it there, it doesn't matter. Let's just get 9.4 out of the way, because we're not taking any action today.
Yeah.
So nothing's gonna happen
Okay.
until,
I think people will feel more comfortable
Yeah.
that they'll
So
be
we'll
able to
put
leave.
9.4 right after consent items,
Okay,
there we go.
okay, that sounds
and we'll put 9.2 at the end.
And I'll amend,
Just leave it where it's at, all right.
and I'll amend my.
So we have a motion by Ms. Bybee, seconded by Mr. Lawson to
Yes.
put 9.4 after the consent items and put 9.2 and leave 9.2 alone.
correct.
There you go.
Okay.
Correct.
Everyone understand the motion? Please vote. If you understand it, good. Passes unanimously. Number 6, approval of the minutes from the council meeting of July 27, 2015. Any omissions or corrections or deletions? Mr. Smith.
Move to approve.
Mr. Lawson.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Smith, seconded by Councilman Lawson to approve the minutes of July 27th. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Moving on to 7.1 is a commendation. This is fun stuff. So, I'm going to read the commendation and then I'll make the presentation. You want to go down front and center there, Teresa? Is Mayberry here? You taking a picture? Would you please? Okay. You ready for this, Ms. Gardner?
I'm ready.
Okay. Whereas the International Institute of Municipal Clerks, IIMC, has been providing educational programs, professional development, and certifications since 1947. It's taken you that long? No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. And whereas IIMC has a membership of more than 9,300, with members in all 50 states, 10 Canadian provinces, and 9 other countries. And whereas IIMC only grants the Certified Municipal Clerk, CMC, designation to those who complete demanding education requirements and who have a record of significant contribution to their local government, their community, and their state. And whereas Teresa Gardner, City Clerk of the City of Sparks, has earned the CMC designation. Now, therefore, I, Gino R. Martini, Mayor of the City of Sparks, Nevada, join with the City Council to thank Ms. Gardner for her pursuit of professional excellence and congratulate her for earning the Certified Municipal Clerk designation. I bet you're going to say something.
Absolutely.
You're not getting away that easy. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Mayor Gino. And City Council, just want to thank you for your support. It's an honor and a privilege to serve the City of Sparks, the citizens, and your council. The success of the clerk's office is because of the entire staff, so I'd like to thank my assistant, Donna DiCarlo, Carrie Brooks, that's in manning the office, and we also have several volunteers that help us out. So our success is a team effort, and thank you for this recognition.
Teresa, thank you. And I just said the comment in light. I realize how hard you work to do this and get this done, so I appreciate it. And you've worked for the city for a long time and done a lot of stuff for it. Believe me, we all appreciate it. Thank you so much. Okay, consent items 8.1 through 8.8. Anyone want to pull one? Okay, looking for motion. Mr. Lawson.
Move to approve consent items 8.1 through 8.8.
Ms. Ratty.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Lawson, seconded by Councilwoman Ratty to approve consent items 8.1 through 8.8. Any further discussion? Mr. Schmidt? No? Okay, seeing none, please vote. Please display. Passes unanimously. Okay, we're going to do 9.4, I think. Okay, let me say something before we do 9.4. This is not an action item today, okay? We're not taking action today. Normally, we don't do public comment on these things the day of a first reading, but we allow it if somebody wants to do it. So we're giving that discretion. Please don't take advantage of it by speaking for a long, long time. If we've heard something that you've already said, and there's no use saying it again, okay? So if you want to speak on this, fill out a card. I have 3 or 4 to speak right now. If there's anyone else that wants to speak to it, please do, and we'll do that. We'll allow the public to do that, but realize there will be no action at this meeting today, okay? So let me read 9.4 as a first reading of Bill number 2693, an ordinance to amend Title 20 of the Sparks Municipal Code in its entirety and providing other matters properly relating thereto. And let me stipulate another thing. What we're going to be talking about today on October 12th is 4 lines in a huge redo of our ordinances. This is just a minuscule part of the whole thing. It's not much, really. Our staff has worked for over 2 years to put this ordinance change on, and I know there's many people in this community that are looking forward to get this passed. So I'm hoping that we won't completely blow this thing up with this feral cat problem, okay? It's just a small piece of the big picture. Ms. Bybee?
Mayor, I'd like to request and see if it's, if I'm able to do that today, that I would like to see us remove Section 20.03.005 on page 88, which is the feral cat provision of the zoning change, in order that we can fully become informed, have the time to fully examine this issue, and not hold up all the work for the past 2 years on the other zoning ordinances that are part, or the major part of the zoning change. So if we can remove that and consider it separately, we'd be able to act possibly in 2 weeks on the rest of the zoning codes, and I'd like to see if I can, if I'm able to do that.
Legally, you want to jump?
Legally, is that something that I can do today?
You can bifurcate it, sure.
So if we were to, tell me how we can do this. We can make a motion today to hear this in 2 weeks by this announcement, and then say that we want to do the feral cat deal on by itself on the 12th of October.
Okay, by operation of law, it has to receive a second reading within 2 weeks. However, you can ask that you can notify the public that the public hearing on that portion of the ordinance will be conducted at a date certain if you have that. You're going to hold it in abeyance in order to allow, why are we allowing this again?
So we can get the major part of the ordinance done and in place, and then address the feral cat problem later, which is just a small portion of a huge change.
465 pages and 4 lines apply to feral cats.
Yeah, I understand that, but nevertheless, it's your rules require that you have a second reading conducted in 2 weeks. I guess you could always suspend the rules and then ask that the public hearing on those 4 lines be conducted at a date certain, if you have a date certain.
Let's get through the comments. Mr. Smith.
You know, there's another section in there that I have questions about too, but I think this can be done all at the same time and just address those in a motion that you might make. For instance, we've got a chicken and bee issue in the same ordinance that I'm not crazy about. So I think we just leave it as it is and address it all when it comes up.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
All right, Mr. Schmidt.
Yeah, I would have no problem if legal says we can do this. My concern is that you publicly have to notice this meeting, but then you're saying you've got to publicly notice the same thing we did under 2 different meetings. You're going to split this up, and you're going to approve 1 in 2 weeks and 1 in 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I would think you would have a problem with your public notice portion of this, that you publish that Title 20 is going to be reviewed. You didn't publish a notice saying Title 20 will be reviewed, all except for this portion will be reviewed in 2 months. So you're setting.
That's problematic.
Okay. Ms. Ratty.
I'm just, question, so the intent today is to do, whether we break it up or do it all together, the second reading would happen on August 24th? Because it has to happen within 2 weeks?
Yes, I think that's what Chet said, but seeing what he has said, maybe it's best just to let it lie on October 12th and move on. Ms. Bybee?
So
well,
we could not public notice the change in when we would be having a second reading on this. And if we're required in 2 weeks, like what you're telling us right now, right now we're looking at hearing this October 12th when we have a full council here. So how is that in compliance with, how are we okay with, because we've set that date and we're noticing that date, is that how we fall in compliance?
Well, this is the advantage of talking to your attorney before a meeting rather than springing something on him at the meeting. To tell you the truth, I have not looked into it. I don't see anything inherently wrong with it, but it may be better to address this particular issue, this issue of bifurcation, at our next meeting. And hopefully I can get an opinion out to you beforehand whether or not you can do that. I am aware that I can't recall whether it's the charter or the rules say that you have to provide 2 weeks, you have to have 2 readings each scheduled for a time and date certain. Now, whether or not you can modify those rules, if it's a charter provision, I think you're going to have a little bit more of a problem if it's a charter provision. I haven't looked into it. It totally caught me by surprise. If you want me to walk out and try and do some research and come back at the end of the meeting, I can try and do that as well. So whatever the pleasure of the council is.
Okay. Sorry about that, Mr. Smith.
Well, and to your point, we noticed everybody already that we'd be discussing this on October 12th. So why would we change it?
Have we noticed everybody?
Well, I think we have, haven't we? That we said that
Well,
October
it's on the
12th.
agenda. Yeah.
Huh?
It's on the agenda. We're not.
We're going to do it October 12th.
All right.
So I would say that's noticing people.
Then let's, again, I wasn't advised. Was anybody in our office advised, Mr. Driscoll or Ms. Gardner?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, all
Mr.
right,
Addy,
well,
go ahead,
it's,
Chet, I'm sorry.
if it's agendized and arguably everybody has enough public notice for this, I would hate to see something this important go down on a technicality.
Okay. Mr. Addy.
And in that spirit, I don't mean to be contentious, but I'm looking at item 9.4, and it says, for a second reading and public hearing of this bill and for its possible adoption and possible approval on August 24th, 2015. Does not say October 12th in the written agenda item. So where I think we are today is we've agendized a first reading. That first reading says August 24th. That will give, unless it says October 12th someplace else, I'm looking at the item, that will give the city attorney a couple of weeks to give us the legal path forward to either postponing that second hearing or moving forward based on what the legal advice we get in the interim is. So I think today it's in our best interest to follow it as it's been laid out on the agenda.
Ms. Spivey.
And I'm willing to wait for that, but I think my point being, I think the zoning, the rest of Title 20 is so important. I would really feel more comfortable totally removing this section, those 4 lines, to let us consider by itself the merits on both sides, which are many and passionate, and we're getting emails and calls and information which we need to make a good decision, but everything else in the zoning code hinging on one 4-line, very emotional issue is difficult for me. And I think I would feel much more comfortable if we can consider that as a separate item, whether we pass the rest of the zoning ordinance minus those 4 lines and then reconsider with more time, more input, and really look at those separately. I hate, one way or the other, whichever way it goes, what it would do to the rest of the zoning ordinance, whether it passed or didn't pass because of this. That's my point of why I'd like to separate them.
Mr. Smith.
Well, and I guess what I'm saying is that that's one issue. There's more issues involved in this, and that's when we're supposed to discuss it. Also, August 24th, we wanted an entire council present, and it won't be present until October 12th. We won't have everybody here. So how many people are we going to have at the August 24th meeting? 3 people again. So 1 dissension, nothing passes. So the August 24th date's not going to happen.
Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just proposing a scenario that if it's agendized for the 24th, right now, we suspend that rule, but we do date certain today. Is that correct? Is that what the law allows us to do? If we can't hear it on the 24th, we have to change it in the public hearing today on when we're actually going to see it, the second.
You have to have a first reading and then a public hearing.
Now, if I would change the scenario around just a little bit, if we had the second hearing on August the 24th, but that 4 lines is pulled out on the 24th, what happens to those 4 lines at that point? Do we start the public hearing process over again, or do we have to do another? Can on the 24th, could they say these 4 lines are being heard on the October the 12th?
Arguably, or at least one argument would be that it would be held in abeyance until the October hearing. Maybe another way of doing this, again, just thinking out loud here, is to delete those 4 sentences today and ratify the code on, if it's going to be ratified, or at least vote on it later on this month during a public hearing. Then you would seek, now you've got your zoning ordinance, all the new zoning codes and everything set up. Then you would come back with an amendment, which we have now, and schedule that for the first meeting in October, the first reading in early October, then have the second reading on that amendment and a public hearing on your October, whatever date we're talking about.
So you basically do the same process twice. You're
Do the
just
same
splitting it out.
process twice.
You know, my preference, and I understand, you know, we've been dealing with the Title 20 changes for probably 2.5 years now that we have it, and I understand because there's pressure to get some of this stuff done. You know, my preference would be to see the package as a whole. I don't want to get into a legal quagmire here because I think there's plenty of opportunities when we start splitting this stuff on up to go down that road. And I think there's passion on both sides of this. I would much rather stay on the side of the law and make it crystal clear exactly what we can do, because I think pulling 4 lines out today is probably even a violation because there's no action we're allowed to do today. You know, this is a first reading only. We're not allowed to pull 4 lines out of the. In my opinion, it's just, you know, I'm not an attorney, but I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night. That was a joke, you know.
Well, I don't think
Anybody-
Charlene was making a motion. I think she was just asking the question.
So I would prefer we just see this thing all on October 12th, get it done, and keep it soundproof at this point.
One question I have is what Julia said. As you look at the agenda down here, it says attached files, August 24th, 2015, CC public hearing. How does that tie into this if we're putting this on October 12th?
Mr. Mayor, I can answer that.
Go ahead. Please.
When this agenda item was done, and if I get a foul, you let me know. When this agenda item was done, the normal process for the agenda item would be the first hearing today,
Yep.
the second hearing on the 24th.
Yep.
After that was in play and the staff report was done, it was brought to our attention that one or more members were not going to be here,
Right.
and it was requested that we have this hearing because of, particularly the feral cat issue, that we have that when all 5 of the members could be sitting at the dais. We discussed it with members looking for dates, and the first date that was available after today, where all members could be physically present, was October 12th. So our suggestion was going to be, based on this being the first reading, that before you announce the second, that we would suggest that the second not happen until the 12th because of the council's desire to have a full council present.
Okay.
And so that's how what you have on the agenda item is one date, and we were going to get to a separate date.
Okay, I understand all that part, not a problem. All I want to know is from you folks, attorney or city manager or whomever, it says on the agenda August 24th. If we vote today to do it on October 12th, are we in compliance with the law? That's all I want to know.
And that's why I said I needed some time to look at that and consider that and ruminate over it, because there, huh?
It's not just there.
It's,
So do we
yeah,
put
I'll
this
tell you what,
on
you
hold?
want to take a 20-minute recess and I'll come back?
Can I just,
Go ahead.
can I just, if you're going to do that, I just want to throw one more option on the table about whether this might be legal and another path forward.
All right.
Could we continue the first hearing until September 28th, which would be the first reading, would be on September 28th, and then the second reading would be on October 12th when we know that we're all here. Which
Yeah,
would
that's what
then-
I was saying. Can we, wanted to say, can we continue the first reading to another date?
As in-
Yes, you can. You
Okay.
can do that.
So that might be the clean way to get us there more efficiently.
Yes, it would.
If everybody really wants to hear it when we're all here on October 12th.
Yeah, that's probably true.
I,
Go ahead, Neil, what do you have to say? Shoot,
Actually,
you're taken aback.
I am taken aback. The comments I was going to make have been rendered moot if you're going to reconsider or reconduct the first reading on September 28th so that we can have the public hearing on the 12th of October. My comments are moot.
Do you mean September 28th?
I mean, September 28th would be the first reading so that we have the second reading when all council members are present on October 12th.
Okay.
Continuing it because we already started it.
Right.
Is that legal, Chet? We okay there?
yes.
Because we'll do a first hearing with 2 weeks' notice and then followed by a second hearing.
Okay.
All right.
All
So
right, can I
is there
get a
on the
motion to
table?
that effect? Who
Is
wants to make it?
Is there still a motion on the, there was never a motion. I'll make that
No,
motion.
I don't believe there was a motion.
So I'm going to. Well, do you want to take public comment?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot about that. Let's do the public comment people in here. Garth Elliott.
So we're still doing public comment, even though it's first reading,
Well, we'll give him a break.
because you decided you opened it normally.
Yeah, normally we don't do it, but when we have people here that want to talk, what's the difference?
You must have seen me wiggling around in my chair as a student of the Nevada Open Meeting Law. Somebody has to live by it day to day, unfortunately. Yeah, you have to take public comment. 9-4 real quick. I won't be repetitious. This is going to give you an opportunity to do as I do, some research. We heard 20 million critters killed in the United States. Well, that's a low figure. I heard 60 million. They're not coming from my yard, and I'd like to see the guy that's counting all 60 or 20 million, because that's bogusware. That's bad science. Please take the interim time that you got to do. It won't take you very long, a couple hours to look at this. Title 20 is 245 pages. I know I printed it out this morning, unfortunately. So please, let's not hold up that great body of work for 4 lines. And I again, take the time in the interim to do a little research and see the truth behind feral cats. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, and thank you for all of your input on that. I'm not a fan of bifurcated bills, and I can tell you can look at Washoe County and see what happened on 55-800. Language never matches. It's not a plan. Very quickly, this is the city of Sparks. I am outraged. We are the city of Sparks. This is a land use issue. This is not an animal issue. It's a land use issue. I don't like it being hijacked into warm and fuzzy and supporting one nonprofit or one nonprofit. It's a decision on how we as citizens of Sparks want our land used. I would like to ask my governing body to consider that we are not ruled by the loudest voice in the room. We are ruled by law. That's why most of us have moved here. I think Mr. Schmidt has a very valid point that when we start advocating and abdicating our right as a governing body to accommodate people who have no say in our zoning law, that is not cooperation, that is sublimation. And I find it offensive in the city of Sparks if we're going to do that.
Joel Blakeslee?
I love you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, let's move on. Oh, that's right, we didn't do it. Okay, go ahead, Julia. Did you want to say something, Ron? I'm sorry.
Second the motion.
Yep.
Okay.
So I'd like to make a motion to continue the first reading of item 9.4 to September 28th.
Have a second?
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Ratty, seconded by Councilman Schmidt to move the first reading of Bill 2693 to September 28th. Any further discussion?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
This is a non-action item? Action on it? So by making a motion and voting on it, arguably you're taking action.
Did we table it?
You can table it. You can,
shoot
you
it.
can reopen the,
Kick it.
the,
You can table it, you can go ahead, finish.
you can table it, or you could open up the approval of the agenda item back again and then just remove it from the agenda. But tabling it is probably more appropriate. I think the,
Want to take your motion off the table there, Gina?
Yes, I remove my motion.
Take a shot at another motion?
I would make a motion to table the first, table item 9.4.
Have a second? By Mr. Schmidt. All in favor?
Nope, I've got some discussion.
Whoop, nope, I didn't see your name up there. Sorry. Mr. Smith.
You keep knocking me off on purpose.
I did not knock you off.
I'd like to, I do have some comment, but I'd also like to get Jim down here. But I just want to make sure that, come on down, Jim. I make sure that everybody in here realize what the staff did for the last 2.5 years on this project, the work they put into it. And there are just 2 items that we all want to talk about, but it doesn't deter from the work you did, Jim. So what you're shaking your head, yes, no?
Yes, and
No, yes.
my concern is that a table is actually an action as well. And so to make a table or a continuance is all in action. Today is agendized for no action. Based on the testimony that I've heard today, my recommendation would be you could just continue it in 2 weeks to the date that you have talked about in October. You can open it up for a public hearing and continue it to the date you have talked about today in October, and just continue it then. But it's my opinion, and I don't, with all respect, City Attorney Adams, I believe that tabling is an action. And based on the example saying that continuance is an action, I believe a tabling is as well.
My suggestion is best shoot it.
on approval of the agenda, open that back up, and then just remove it from the agenda.
I believe you probably removed it from the agenda for today.
Yeah.
Not to be argumentative, but I would, for the record, Neil Cruz, Deputy City Manager, would argue that the first reading's already taken place. The mayor read it into the record. The first reading has taken place.
It's been opened.
You've.
Okay.
We've completed that act.
I read it. Yeah, you're right.
Okay, so let's just continue on to second reading, scheduled in 2 weeks, and then the city council can take whatever action it deems appropriate at that time.
meeting. Okay.
How would that be? Good call,
Perfect.
Neil.
So we don't have to do anything. We've already done everything we've done. We have to take no action. Did the first reading. It'll come up on the 24th.
Mm-hmm.
We will discuss it at that time, and at that time, we can move it or shoot it or kick it or do what the heck ever we want.
Have public
Is that all
hearing,
right?
you can do whatever you want.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Yeah, the part I left out was when I read the first reading, it will take place the first, the
Oh, so we
second
didn't
reading-
do the first reading.
Say again? The second reading will take place at the meeting on Monday, August 24th at 2 p.m. Everybody got that? No, that's what
That's
we will
October.
discuss. That's what we will discuss on the 24th, and we can make that decision then. Ms. Bybee? Are we done, Mr. Adams?
I hope
Thank you
so.
so much. Go ahead, Ron.
Mr. Mayor, I understand the process, and I think that, it's good that we can get consensus on when we can hear this thing. I'll be one of those members that will not be here on the 24th, and I just ask the council to afford me the opportunity to be able to see this at a later date. You can choose to
I think it'll happen.
to pass it or deny it or whatever you want to do on the 24th. That's your prerogative. I won't be here. I'll be out of the country. I'm just asking that you go ahead and give me the opportunity.
Okay. All right, let's get on to some general business. Consideration of possible approval of $440,000 for contract laborers for parks and street maintenance, hometown Christmas, community service crew, sheriff's work crew, and park rentals during fiscal year 16. So I want to be sure everybody knows this is not a first reading. We're going to take some action on this, are we not, Ron? One way or another, we're taking action. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Gino. Council, Ron Corman, Public Works Division Manager, for the record. What's before you today is a request to encumber $440,000 to be used for contract labor in the Public Works Maintenance Division, primarily in the street maintenance and park maintenance sections. And just a little bit of background for you. Last year was the first year that we fully had funded $440,000 for contract labor, and I just wanted to give you some quick numbers. In the Parks Division, 19,793 hours of labor were provided at a cost of $328,000. This primarily encompassed trash pickup, restroom cleaning, mowing, weed spraying, irrigation maintenance, and of course the hometown Christmas setup and tear down. Those dollars also helped fund 4,332 hours of sheriff's crew time at a cost of $11,500, and there was 7,274 hours of street maintenance time at a cost of $117,131, primarily used for crack sealing and patching. So we would ask that you please allow us to encumber $440,000 this year to continue on with those activities.
Questions, Mr. Schmidt?
I don't have any problems with the $440,000. We've done that same amount for the last several years, and it's a good stretch of dollars because it's part-time work. We're not paying all the benefits and everything for it. But this is the first year we put in special events into the, specifically we're putting in Hometown Christmas. Have we been using these folks for that before? We just haven't covered it under the agreement, under this agreement, or is that a new thing we're doing this year?
It's been covered in the past.
City manager, actually, council member, last year was the first year that we did include special events in there. Yeah, the old amount prior to that was $40,000, or it was $400,000, and we added the $40,000 from the special events budget. This will be the second year of that process.
And so you're saying $40,000 of this money is going to decorations at Christmas?
Actually, a multitude of special events, not all just Christmas.
Can as tours of marketing, I'm going to request it on for the committee, but to the thing, the council, because again, this gets back to trying to control our costs for special events. We've been taking on this thing for the last 10 years and trying to get all these numbers into one section so we know how much special events are costing us. And this is a surprise to me that we're spending $40,000 from another fund to support our special events. So I would like to just get that.
We'll make sure that we follow up with a complete accounting.
I'm not disagreeing with it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's
Understood.
Approve the money for it because I think it's well spent. I just need to keep control on cost of special events. I'd like to know where
We
they're
will
all
provide
coming from. So,
a complete accounting, sir.
all right, thank you.
My money. Mr. Smith.
I think part of that $40,000 for that is steam cleaning after the events and cleaning up downtown. Is that part of it?
Yes.
I just
Lettuce.
yeah. I just question one thing, that we do this earlier next year to take care of all the weeds and the tree trimming, because that's the complaints we get, if we can do that earlier in the year.
We continuously do it all year long.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's kill it.
We keep trying.
Okay. Thank you.
Keep getting rain and it comes back.
Anyone else? Okay, looking for motion. Ms. Bybee.
I move to approve the use of contract laborers in the amount of $440,000 during fiscal year 15-16.
Mr. Schmidt.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Bybee, seconded Mr. Schmidt on agenda item 9.1. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. 9.2, presentation. Thanks, Ron. Presentation, discussion, and possible direction to Washoe County Regional Animal Services on proposed changes to Washoe County Code Chapter 55 related to congested area licensing and other provisions. Welcome. Cheyenne, is it?
It is.
All right.
Good afternoon,
Welcome.
Mayor and council members. Cheyenne Scholl, Animal Services Director, for the record. You'll be happy to know I'm not here to talk about feral cats, but I'm rather here to bring forward to you the next proposed code revisions for Washoe County Code Chapter 55, and to also record and entertain any questions that you may have or concerns with regards to those proposed changes. So the first section of the code that we propose to bring to our Board of County Commissioners sometime in late September as a tentative time frame is determining the area of animal congested areas within Washoe County Code, and it is Chapter 55.230. Congested areas of Washoe County are determined by the Board of County Commissioners for purposes of regulations regarding animals, specifically licensing, vaccination, and animal restraint requirements. The goal in revising this section of code is to be consistent and be clear, and also to help us enforce and obtain compliance from our pet owners. All of the incorporated area, City of Sparks, is congested with regard to animals. The current code, there's a few data points that need to be adjusted, and there's meets and bounds that are all the meets and bounds are currently included within Chapter 55. We are proposing to remove all of the meets and bounds from Chapter 55 and keep those within our Community Services Department, removing them from Chapter 55 again. We would like to match the current and future changes to animal congested areas, and we specifically focused on language cleanups and clarifications to definitions within this code. So for example, domestic animals, referencing dogs, cats, or other animals for personal enjoyment, excluding exotics, farm, and agricultural animals. Making a definition for own, and clarifying and inserting a definition for the service animals, and also inserting a definition for tethering animals as a form of restraint. As this particular section of code is being proposed to be revised, there are not a lot of direct relevance to the City of Sparks. As I mentioned, all of Sparks is congested anyway. It's just mostly clarification and language cleanup in that particular section of the code. So if I can entertain any questions, comments as I wrap up that particular section, then I can move on to the next section, if anyone has any.
Question?
This one is the Washoe County Code Chapter 55.230, determination of congested areas.
Questions? Okay, seeing none, go ahead.
Okay, the next section is with regards to licensing and vaccination, Washoe County Code Chapter 55.340. Again, the same timeline. We hope to take this section to the Board of County Commissioners sometime in late September, tentatively. Currently within our code, each dog over the age of 4 months residing in a congested area must be vaccinated for rabies and also licensed with Regional Animal Services. Outside of the area, animals must be vaccinated but not necessarily licensed if they're in a non-congested area. Each dog license is required to be renewed annually. A metal tag is issued each time a license is renewed. In our proposed code language, we would like to give the option for a 1 or a 3-year license. As with animal vaccinations for rabies, if it's their second vaccination, it is good for 3 years. So we would like to open that option up for individuals to be able to license their animal for 3 years. It should be renewed within 30 days of the rabies vaccination date. We also would like to open up the opportunity for individuals to utilize the microchip in lieu of an actual metal tag. So currently, as I said, we issue a metal tag with every license registration. If somebody chose to use their microchip number in lieu of that tag, many people choose not to put collars and tags on their animals. If they wanted to use that with their paid registration fee, they could utilize that microchip number. We also would like to provide a license exemption for animals in the temporary care of releasing agencies that are approved and who are partnering with us at Regional Animal Services. So releasing agencies are rescue groups that work with us and pull animals from us that are not necessarily animals that Nevada Humane Society has pulled from us. So you may have a rescue that pulls an animal and puts it into foster care for 10 days or 2 weeks or 3 weeks until they find an adopter for that animal. We would like to allow an exemption for those folks to not have to license those animals while they're in temporary rescue care. And the let's see. The last particular section, we added some clarification on the definition to allow an exemption for animals to be exempted from rabies vaccinations for medical reasons. So if their veterinarian provides a document allowing that animal to be exempted from rabies vaccinations due to health issues or reasons, then we would not require them to be vaccinated for rabies. There are some additional sections that you may have seen in your red line working draft that essentially are just language cleanups and also just some of the language that we decided to change since this hasn't been revised since 2005. For example, when we refer to euthanasia in the current code, it says destroy, and we would like to change that to euthanize to be a little bit more humane. And then another section that I wanted to bring to your attention is when excuse me, when redeeming an unvaccinated animal back to its owner, if that animal is not currently vaccinated for rabies, we would like to offer that pet owner a temporary license with the ability to bring back proof that they have vaccinated their animal for rabies within 14 days and then obtain their permanent license. And with that, that concludes the overview of the proposed changes that we would like to take forward to the Board of County Commissioners next. If there are any questions, comments, I would be happy to answer.
County or the regional animal services
on an annual basis? Well, currently we receive about $200,000 in revenue for animal licensing, but we have several strategies in place for the next fiscal year to increase our licensing rate. We have about a 23% compliance rate of all of Washoe County for licensing. So we have several strategies in place to improve that, to increase the licensing and vaccination compliance rate from our pet owners in the community.
over $1 million. Who's going to enforce this? If I'm taking my dog hunting and I don't have a license for him, and I get pulled over for a taillight out, is that policeman going to write me a ticket for not having a licensed dog?
Not generally. Not in Washoe County. Now, can't
You know
speak
that
for
they're
other
experiencing
counties.
this in Washington State right now.
Correct. Yeah, it is not generally in Washoe County, but again, it depends on the county. If that particular enforcement agency chose to enforce that law, they certainly can.
And what's the cost going to be, just so that, I'm assuming there's a cost to it, that we're going to have to worry about seniors, and unless there's an exemption in there for seniors I didn't see.
The current cost for licensing, if your animal is not spayed or neutered, it's $20 for a 1-year license, and it's $8 for an altered or spayed or neutered animal per year, and it's $8 for a senior citizen.
And the rabies shot would run?
Rabies shots can run anywhere between $10 and $25, depending on the veterinarian that you choose.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Bybee.
Cheyenne, are you not addressing changes then in 55.460? Because we have that in our packet. That
it's gone. It's done.
And it wasn't addressed because I had a couple questions there, but if that's not being considered today, then I don't have questions.
Councilwoman Bybee, yes, there are no changes being made to that particular section of the code.
Okay, I do have a question on that first line of 55.460. I'm a little confused on the second half of the sentence. It says to be, unlawful for domestic animals except cats to be at large in congested areas. Then the second half, damage by animals, capture and impoundment by individuals. I'm not following what the intent of that line is.
That's referring to your stray animals. So if you have a dog that, breaks through the fence and causes property damage to your neighbor's property, or breaks through the fence and, injures your animal or something like that, that's what that refers to.
So that it's unlawful if your animal does damage or if other people capture and impound? Those are all violations.
Yes, and that is I don't particularly have that particular section in front of me, but I believe that section refers to the ability of that person to contain that animal and turn it over to animal services if it's a stray animal that has come onto their property.
Okay, gives him that ability. And then the other question I had was on line 4 in that same section that talks about it refers to domestic animals, except cats, which are found at large in a congested area. But in B and C, it says any domestic animal which is trespassing on that person's property, and C, any domestic animal which is endangering property, public safety, or another animal. Does that include cats or not? In B and C, it doesn't state.
No.
It doesn't state an exclusion. It does exclude them from A, but B and C does not exclude them, so they would be included in those two provisions?
I do not believe so. Again, it's not in front of me, so I don't have the exact verbiage, but cats are not included in the actual verbiage with regards to animals roaming loose.
Right, but on the trespassing and on the property public safety damage, it doesn't say except cats in there. So they would be included. I'm just looking verbatim at the language of this. I'm just questioning, are cats included in that or not, or do you need to get back to me
I
on
do
that?
not believe so, but I can get back to you with an
because it
affirmative
doesn't
answer.
state in the language. So that was my only question, whether they were
Okay,
included
I can get
or
back
not.
to you on that.
Cats get away
Okay.
with everything. I know. Ron Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Cheyenne, 55.4851A, it says charging owners or persons having the care, custody, or possession of animals for all costs and maintenance incurred by the animal services, including special assessments. What are special assessments? It's the last three words in that paragraph. Well, it's hard to tell on here. Oh, it's 17, page 17. Did you find it, Shane?
I am going to venture to guess that this particular reference, special assessments, is going to be for permits, kennel permits, things of that nature.
Then I would suggest you change that so they're clear on what that is, because special assessments could be anything. Yeah.
I will make a note of that, Councilman.
Thank you.
Yes, that's clear. Yeah, that makes sense. Anyone else? Okay, what else, Cheyenne?
I believe that concludes everything I have for you today. I will bring forward the next section of revisions as they become available.
We look forward to it.
Thank you very much for your time.
Oops, wait a minute, Ron Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to reiterate my last two comments, the last two meetings we've had, that I think that there is a reason why we're in the feral cat mess. You're quite aware of why we're in the feral cat mess.
Absolutely.
And your comments to me last time is that you took it to the county commissioner, that the city of Sparks has concerns, and the response came back, we're not interested. And I think that sends a very clear message to the city of Sparks, not only in this issue, but in many other broad issues of how Washoe County is treating its fellow communities in the area. And then I think that your method of doing these and bringing them to this way, in which the council has no choice in the matter, we can say whatever we want to, but it's at the end of the program, not in the middle of the program, a lack of communication. I think you see here now what your actions as Washoe County has caused the city of Sparks, and I think it's too bad. I think it's a shame. I think there's a better way of doing business, and so I'm voting against it on a matter of principle, that a good format was not used to go ahead and include the city of Sparks, your partner. We pay for the services. We pay your salary. We pay for your benefits. And I think we need to change this formula of how we do things. Thank you.
So we need action here, Steve. You want recommendations, what?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to kind of follow up on Mr. Schmidt's comments. This time around is being dealt with totally different than we had in the other rounds, to where we're well a month way beyond the first discussion that's going to be done publicly. It's intended with the red line for this body to get into the detail and make or suggest changes that then can be brought forward and go from there. And that was really listening to the council in the past. So this is really kind of time and place for, if you have questions, answers, suggested changes, this would be the time to provide them to Ms. Scholl, and then she would be able to modify the red line that she has where it's appropriate and drive it forward. So this was an intent to hear the council, get your comments long before it's fait accompli, if you will, in front of the commission.
Okay. Ms. Ratty?
I was going to go ahead and make a motion, so what I heard is the concern to be taken forward to the county commission is please taking a look at better defining special assessments so that the public knows what that could be. I didn't hear any other comments, so I'll make a motion that you please share that input with the county commission.
Do I have a second?
I had discussion. Can I have to?
Well, you could have us make a second for discussion. Okay, dies for lack of a second. Discussion, Ms. Bybee.
I would just like to add to that, I really want clarification on that one section on whether it includes cats or not, because it's not listed in our copy here. And considering we're looking at the whole cat issue, that section, I know I hate to bring it up again, but I just want to, I like it to be spelled out and clear, and it's not in the current language that we have in front of us. So I would just request that be added along to the other request by Councilman Smith.
Mr. Adams.
I had a question, too. We had a public speaker mention something about a cattery permit. Are those still being issued?
Yes, they are.
And why isn't that applicable to your feral cat program?
Cattery permits are for individuals who choose to own more than 7 cats, and those would be considered their pet cats.
Pet cats,
Yes.
and your caretakers are not considered to be owners.
Correct.
So they don't own those 20 or 30 cats.
Correct.
And they don't have to get a cattery permit.
Correct.
Thank you.
Ms. Ratty.
So I'm going to try again, because it was not intentional, my oversight of Councilwoman Bybee's concern. So I will make a motion to accept the report and direct staff to go back to the county commission with 2 concepts. One, to make sure that there's clarity around the special assessments, and the second, to make sure that there's clarity around whether or not cats are included in the 2 items that Ms. Bybee pointed out.
Do we have a second? Ms. Bybee.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Ratty, seconded by Ms. Bybee to bring back to the county commission the suggested amendments, that you understand those.
I do.
Okay. Please vote. Passes 4-1. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you next time. Okay, I have some cards here from Margaret Flint, who I think has left, and Mr. and Mrs. Volz. Is Mr. Volz here, Mrs. Volz? Okay, never mind then. Moving on, 9.3, consideration, discussion, possible direction to the city manager regarding the proposal provided by Waste Management for a potential amendment of the franchise agreement concerning the hauling of garbage and residential solid waste. Mr. Marin, the garbage man of Sparks.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, council members, and now for something completely different. Today we are discussing a possible amendment to the city's franchise agreement concerning garbage. As background, the current franchise became effective in July of 2008 and has an initial 10-year term with mutually agreeable options for extension. So many may ask why we're here if the existing agreement doesn't expire for 3 more years. Well, the City Council requested in past workshops that we work toward an enhancement to the residential recycling program similar to what was rolled out in the City of Reno in 2012 and 2013. We've worked hard with Waste Management to refine the program proposed today, to learn from the experience gained in Reno, and to design features specific to the City of Sparks. The purpose of this item is to review the proposal and provide feedback so that we can return with a formal amendment to the existing franchise. We would not be writing a new one, we would be amending the current one. And with respect to the scope of the agreement, that is what materials are hauled by whom, there are no changes from the existing scope. While there are rate adjustments that impact both residential customers and commercial customers, the changes in process affect only the residential customers. So to be clear and on the record, the proposal contemplated today does not affect the scope of the existing franchise. Therefore, services provided by other haulers in the community would not be affected or altered by what's been proposed here. Leaving the bulk of commercial services open to competition for non-garbage items was a huge part of the last franchise agreement and the negotiation that we did in 2007 and 2008, and that hasn't changed here. So with that made clear, some have asked why the city would not choose to bid franchise services at this time, and that's just a matter of contract law. You have an existing franchise agreement that's binding for 3 more years. However, with the consent of both parties, that is the city and Waste Management, we can go ahead and make changes to the agreement that might be beneficial to both. So your staff report includes an attachment that's a written proposal of itemized changes proposed by Waste Management. And I'm going to quickly run through a few of those more major items. Item 1, the scope of the franchise, again, remains the same. The proposal deals almost entirely with enhancements to the residential recycling program. So therefore, item 2 deals with expanding the types of materials that might be recycled from the curb, expanding the number of plastics and other materials that might be thrown in the recycling bin, with the intention that recyclable materials no longer have to be sorted by the user and would all go inside a single 96-gallon recycling can. The existing crate system would be removed in favor of the new rolling cart. Item 3 deals with the stuff that's placed outside the trash can. Under the current agreement, today, residential customers may place up to 6 additional bags of materials outside their can each week for pickup under the existing rate. Moving toward a more robust recycling program, it's hoped that customers will recycle more of their waste and cut down on the need to place extra bags at the curb. The proposed amendment does remove that allowance for extra materials each week with some other options. Waste Management would provide each residential customer 20 stickers or tags a year, and these would be used in instances where a customer has no choice but to place additional materials outside their trash cans. If needed, they can always buy additional stickers as well. In addition to the tag program, this amendment would include a 4-week period in the fall and a 4-week period in the spring where up to 6 bags of materials per week could also be placed curbside without requiring tags. This is an attempt to try to address the fall leaf season and a spring cleaning cycle. Finally, residents would also be allowed up to 4 free trips a year to the landfill or the transfer station to dispose of items. Those trips would be at the discretion of the customer and not limited to the current, quote, free dump days that are offered by Waste Management. It would be on their own schedule. Item 5 addresses a few commercial issues. Of note, the proposal states that, quote, no significant service charges would be made to the commercial side of the franchise, unquote. There is a rate correction requested for franchise garbage service at the 96-gallon level for commercial customers, and that's a commercial customer that just gets the same standard residential-sized trash can for their services, and it's a rate correction that, by the statement of Waste Management, was an oversight on their part for the last time we did this. Additionally, the proposal asks the city to not issue any further business licenses to haulers of solid waste or recyclable materials beyond those already issued. This would not affect existing haulers, but only new ones looking to enter the community. However, this item has caused us some concern, and initial feedback from the city attorney's office caused us to believe that this may be an unreasonable restraint in trade. So this may be an item that we drop off. While these prohibitions may exist in other communities, it's usually in cases where that community has franchised the entire scope of the waste stream and not just certain portions like we have here. Item 6, the City of Sparks as an organization historically has received collection services from Waste Management at no cost as a condition of the franchise, and that continues. The last renewal placed a cap on the value of that service, and the proposal from Waste Management today removes that cap. Item 7 speaks to the term of the agreement, as Waste Management is seeking an additional 10 years to the base term of the existing franchise, making the expiration date July of 2028, again leaving the 2 mutually agreeable option periods at the end. Item 9 deals with rates. Regionally, the rates paid by commercial customers of the franchise have historically helped to subsidize the rates paid by residential customers. That's to say that the residential rates have never truly covered the total cost to provide services. This is the case in each of the municipal franchises in the area, whether it be Reno, the county, or Sparks. The proposed amendment finally does remove that subsidy with respect to the City of Sparks. This is important as it will affect the rates of both commercial and residential customers. First off, removal of that subsidy will result in a rate reduction to all commercial customers of 2% across the board. The existing rate schedule that we have published on the city's website would be reduced upon approval. Second is the impact on residential rates. Residential customers will be impacted by the subsidy change, as well as the increased costs associated with the installation and use of the new program. So under this proposed amendment, the total cost of residential services would increase by 98 cents per month. That's taking it from $19.37 per residential to $20.35. The new rate would become effective at the quarterly billing following the delivery of new recycling containers. This section of the proposal also addresses some new rates associated with animal-resistant cans, senior rates, and a new compacted yardage rate for the commercial franchise customers that may use compactors in sizes not already addressed in the rate schedule. And there's been a concern brought up with this on why we're addressing commercial compactor rates in the middle of this. Again, the scope of your franchise right now does include commercial garbage, and this affects only commercial garbage. Those that have compactors for commercial trash or recyclable materials, this would not apply. This is strictly garbage. Item 10 addresses concerns waste management seen regionally with respect to communities such as mobile home parks and some condominium complexes where garbage services are individual to the units, but they're billed to the master community. The proposal establishes a formula for calculating rates based on a percentage of occupancy within the community. This falls under lessons learned within the city of Reno in that franchise rollout and concerns brought by management companies of these master communities and a solution that they've started working out in Reno, and we're just getting ahead of it here. Item 11 reinforces that all materials collected under the franchise will need to be delivered to a properly permitted facility. And this only has to do with the delivery. It doesn't get into the issue of whether or not I, as the owner of the garbage, can say you have to take it over there versus over there. As the franchise is currently written, Waste Management owns the waste the minute it's placed on the curb. And where they choose to take it is their own business concern at the moment. So moving on. Item 12 speaks to the transition plan. If this amendment does go through, it's ultimately approved, it will represent a significant change to residential customers. Those changes will need to be communicated frequently and consistently. Waste Management has marketing materials that will be physically distributed by mail and on the new containers as they're delivered. Electronic resources will also be used that will be customized to the City of Sparks and made available on the websites of both Waste Management and the city. And finally, Waste Management is committed to a locally staffed and trained customer service number that will be staffed at least 2 weeks before and at least 3 months following implementation. That concludes my quick overview on this. Representatives from Waste Management are here. Greg Martinelli is here to speak to concerns or details I may have missed or questions that I can't answer for you. But at this point, with this item, we're looking for feedback with respect to the proposed amendment in order that we may possibly return with more refined contract language and a final rate sheet at a future meeting. I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, do you want questions to you first or what?
It's at your discretion, sir.
Okay, I do have some questions real quick. And I normally don't ask, but I'm going to. I received an email today, which I forwarded on to you.
Yes, sir.
And I forwarded on to the rest of the council. It's from Mr. Mike Draper. I handle the public relations and government affairs for Nevada Recycling and Salvage and Green Solutions Recycling. They sent me some questions on items 7, 9B, and 11.
Yes, sir.
And you've probably already covered those things, but would you cover them once more specific to their questions from the email that you sent back to me, your response, please?
Yes, sir. Item 7. In this case, the consortium that Mr. Draper represents, they are concerned with the extension of the franchise and a wish that the city would go ahead and franchise the recycling portion of the business with respect to commercial customers. And it comes, I think, out of a concern of how things evolved with the franchise discussion in the city of Reno. And I just need to point out this is not that. With respect to item 7, commercial recycling is not included in the scope of your current franchise. Those that are on commercial accounts are free to go with whomever in the community they wish to service their recycling business, and that remains so under this scope. It's purely up to the discretion of the council. If they want to go down the road of wanting to franchise that chunk of the business, that's certainly at your discretion, but is not included as part of the intention of this item today. Item 9B, this again deals with the compacted yardage rate. There was concern from Mr. Draper that how is that we're dealing with commercial with respect to a residential discussion. But again, in the city of Sparks, it is all one agreement. So if there are going to be changes, it's best happening all right now. There, within the rate schedule, which you can look at on our own website, lists out different compactor sizes. And these are the large industrial compactors you find behind commercial businesses, grocery stores, and the like. There are multiple sizes of compactors listed there, but apparently there's not every size known to man. And so they just are calculating a rate that they'd like to establish for those sizes of compactors that aren't listed on the franchise. But again, this is only for those franchise garbage customers. If you've got a compactor, you're compacting cardboard or other recyclables, you're negotiating that with whoever is servicing your account for recyclable materials. Finally, item 11 talks about the facilities where Waste Management can take their materials. As long as it's permitted, that's what counts. So if they choose in 1 week that this material may have more value at one transfer facility or one processor over another, they have every right to do that because, again, once it's on their trucks, they own it. As long as the facility is permitted. And so, again, the group that Mr. Draper represents, they are a licensed recycler in this community. If Waste Management chooses within their operational plan to take it there, that is their option. But we've paid the rate to get it off the curb, and it's out of our hands at that stage. So I think that answers those 3 questions.
Mike, are you okay with those? You got any other questions you'd like to ask of this, or pretty, those answer your questions?
We were just trying to clarify.
Okay, are you, okay. So you're clear now? Yes. Great, thank you. Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dan, right now, the franchise agreement goes for 3 years, what we have right now, with 2 5-year extensions.
Yes, sir. Mutually agreeable extensions. They're not
It's
one-sided.
13 years our existing can go out right now.
Yes, sir.
Okay. My concern is making these changes now to go out to 2028 in an industry that's changing extremely fast. Extremely fast. I mean, in 3 years, I think, when we come back on up, we'll be looking at different ways of doing this. In 8 years, I can guarantee you we're going to be seeing things different ways. I'm opposed to going out to 2028 with this thing, because I think that I just got a report from the National Dairy Association, and I know this is a different type of waste that they have, but now they have systems on out that farmers are being paid back with as little as 60 cows on their property, 5 years payback on their generation systems, and they're providing entire communities with power. That's how fast this commodity of recycling and waste is changing. And I think that this industry is, around the world is way farther advanced than we are here in the United States on things. And we'll see those changes happen in the next few years. So I'm opposed to the 10-year extension. Cover for me again, too, because I thought we talked about this, we had a change that, the ownership applies. You said one time it's at the curb, and the other one is on their trucks.
I'm sorry, it was intended to be the same thing, but yes, your existing language in the existing franchise indicates that once it's on the curb, it is owned by Waste Management. Now, operationally, you can go out an hour before the truck shows up and pull it back in your garage, and it really functionally doesn't matter. But the point is, we as a government agency have not gotten into the detail of saying you must take it here versus there.
And I think that becomes an issue of ownership. Not right now, but very quickly, ownership is going to become an issue of recyclable products or refuge. So, I'm not going to argue those things with it. I think that most of the things set up a lot of things that we have. Those are my 2 issues I have. One being a big issue is the time frame extension. I think we still have the power of this council to go 13 years based upon performances and what we see happening. Those are good trigger points. Those are good to have. And going out to 2028, I don't see it as a necessary option.
Ms. Reddy.
Just a couple of questions. How much does it cost to buy a sticker for that extra bag?
Greg. I'm inviting Greg Martinelli to the table as the local general manager for Waste Management. We have not nailed down a current rate schedule with respect to this proposed amendment outside of the monthly rate for the home. So,
Councilmember Brady, Greg Martinelli on behalf of Sparks Sanitation and Waste Management. The proposal is, I had to make it small enough to get on one sheet.
Stay away from
And Dan, while he's looking that one up, I'll throw you another one. Do we know when the counties and the city of Reno's franchise agreements expire?
Reno nailed theirs down in 2012, and that was at least a 10-year deal, if I recall correctly.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The Reno expiration date.
2029.
And do you know the counties?
2019.
Thank you.
The answer to your question was $2.63.
Thank you. And then perhaps I'm just being dense here, but I understand the context of the compactor question, but I still don't understand the impact of the compactor question. So I understand it only is garbage, and there's a couple different sizes of compactors, but what is the impact on a commercial business that falls within the franchise for their garbage around this compactor issue?
It's establishing a rate per cubic yard or square foot?
Compacted yard.
Compacted yard.
A rate that didn't exist before? Is it an
Correct.
increase in fees?
For instance, if you look at our rate schedule now, we've got a rate for a 10-yard compactor in place, and we probably have one for 15 and for a 20-yard. This establishes rates for those that went out and bought a 13-yard compactor.
So were those
it's-
folks
it's-
paying at a 10-yard rate or at a 15-yard rate before? Or were they paying nothing?
Well, there was no rate for them, so they were paying at the closest rate we could get to the size of their compactor. But we tried to cover the majority of the standard size compactors, but every now and then you get somebody that comes up with an oddball and you can't price it. So it's your responsibility to set rates, not ours. And so we're just asking, we took the compacted yardage rate and came up with what the compacted yardage was, which was $21.07. And so if we get a 13-yarder, we can multiply that by $21.07,
So you
and
can
we have a
basically
rate.
prorate it to the right
Yes,
size? Okay.
correct.
So if they're a 13 right now and they're paying for a 15, they're going to be happy, and if they're a 10 right now and if they're a 13 right now and they're paying a 10, they're going to be unhappy, but basically it's going to be a standard rate no matter what size your compactor
Right. The
is.
majority of the compactors are, 14s, 20s, 30s, 10s, but every now and then you get some oddballs in there depending upon different manufacturers, and we're just trying to clean that up as
But
well.
if you're a 15 now and there's a rate for 15, that rate doesn't increase?
No.
It's just that prorated for the folks who are in between?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I like this whole deal, and I was the one a couple years ago in a workshop that said I didn't want to get rid of the old franchise agreement and start with a new one. But just to be clear with what Mr. Schmidt was saying, we have 3 years left on this agreement, and then we have 2 5-year options.
Correct.
Okay, so and it's mutual options.
Correct.
Okay, and what I do like about it is the 20 tags, plus we have 8 weeks of free of more bags, 6 bags at a pickup. Plus, how many times do we get to go to the dump without?
4.
4 more times, and it's at our leisure. We don't have to do it on the Friday or Saturday that you want.
Correct.
That's correct.
And again, technology may advance a lot. We all know it will in the next 13 years. But unless we can transport our garbage like they did in Star Trek, they're still picking it up at the curb. And once they pick it up, then we don't have to worry about what you do with it.
Exactly.
Okay. I like this deal. Thank you.
I might, if I might comment, Mr. Smith. We did put some language in the 2008 agreement to try to address this issue because I don't know. I don't know what we're going to do with the material tomorrow.
Mhm.
But we changed that language to reflect that the franchisee and the city would make a determination as to what we're going to do with it, because it'd be a partnership. I mean, we need to decide. If you guys want us to take it to your sewer treatment plant so you can generate methane over there, then we need to sit down and figure out what that is and figure out what the impact is, positive or negative, towards a ratepayer. So I don't know whether that gets us where we're trying to get. I had a conversation with Mr. Schmidt. I understand his concern, and I don't know. I just don't know what's going to happen. He's right. There's all sorts of technologies out there. Most of them are driven by the cost of disposal. We don't have that significant cost of disposal in Nevada like they do in some places, but doesn't mean it can't change tomorrow. So.
Well, and ever since you started single stream recycling in Reno, we've been getting calls right and left. How come we don't have it? And we knew it was you had to roll it out. And plus, we wanted a good deal. We wanted a better deal than our counterparts did. I think we got that.
Well, you guys, I told Dan earlier, you really actually made the right decision. I would have rather you did it quicker.
Yeah.
But wait. We got a lot of good stuff out of it. Your Citizens Advisory Board is actually the one that gave us the idea of, well, I need to clean my yard up in the spring too. What about then? Well, we decided, well, instead of 6 weeks in the fall, why don't we do 4 and 4? And so there's a lot of good things that came out of that. A lot of lessons learned, and we think that we're going to provide you with a better product.
So let's take September 1st, and I'm just throwing that out. How long, if you started on September 1st, how long before Sparks is rolled out completely?
Well, I mean, since we're dropping another 96 at everybody's home, unless they don't want it, then we'd recover it. But we don't have the various sizes like we had in Reno, which caused a lot of heartaches. We should be able to get it rolled out in October. I don't see any reason why we couldn't.
Okay.
Great.
Super. Thank you.
Ms. Bybee.
I like the whole the scope of the agreement, and based on all the calls and emails I get in the last 6 months I've been here, on single stream recycling seems to be one of those big questions and big concerns on Sparks getting it. So I'm happy to see that. I think it's a great improvement over Reno. I love the fact we've got the bags in the spring and the fall, that we've got the 4 free dump days, and I think those are all things that even with the $1 or 98 cents more, I think people hopefully will understand that's what they're getting, is not subsidizing the commercial, and also that little bit extra for single stream, I think, is really worthwhile. The only thing I do have an issue with, I would agree with Councilman Schmidt, is in the term. 2028 is just too far out for me. I think 13 years, going to 2018 with the additional 10 years that we already have, the 5 years, increments on top of that, is a long, that's quite a bit of time out. And I, with free market and things changing, I'm more comfortable with staying with that agreement, and the 2028 would be the only thing that I could not support.
Mr. Lawson.
Took the words out of my mouth. 13 years is a long time, so I'd support something shorter than that. Everything else looks very good. You guys came to the table, and I think it's created that split we wanted between commercial and residential. But yeah, then with two mutually agreeable 5s, that's 2038. That's a long time that's a lot of councils that have to deal with it.
It is worth pointing out that the agreement previous to the one in 2008 was a 20-year agreement.
Yeah, exactly.
I understand that, but we're also in a different economy and a different place in our life. And Greg and I had lunch today, and we talked a little bit about our changing dynamics in our community. I believe that recycling is going to be a big thing for us, and it's going to be one of the determining factors companies look at. It's not going to be the only thing, but it's going to be one of the factors that a company looks at. Are you a green community? Are you recycling? What do you guys do with your recycling? I mean, there's a lot to this whole deal, and I'm just a little concerned with 13 years. So,
Ms. Reddy.
Yeah, I just wanted clarity because I think I heard Mr. Smith say, so I just want to make sure we're absolutely certain on our facts. So our current franchise is 3 more years plus 2 mutually agreed 5-year extensions.
Correct.
So we could open it up in 3 years.
Yes.
The new proposed franchise is 13 more years plus 2 mutually agreed on 5-year extensions?
Correct.
So we would be locking in for 13 years.
Yes.
Let me ask you a question on the extensions, the 5-year extensions as they come up. Don't we have an opportunity to discuss what's going on, and at that time talk about changes that we might want to make?
If you're talking about structural changes, of course. I mean, if let's just say we do something here and 2 years from now, we decide that there's something else you want to see, that doesn't mean we need to wait 5 years to sit down and talk about it.
That's what I'm talking about. There's flexibility in this thing, is there not, even though we do 13 more years or 15 more years or 2 more years. There's always flexibility with this contract and us, the ability to sit down and talk about it and make changes.
Right.
Going back to the whole basis of this item, the only reason we're here is because both parties are agreeing to make changes to a binding agreement.
Exactly. So I don't have a problem with anything. You guys have done a hell of a job, Dan. Please, thank you. What's your name? Great job by Waste Management to get together, and I'm so glad we waited a while to see what was going on in Reno, and I think the things that we were able to bring over here that's not over there has been good for our customers. Did everybody get what they want? No, but that's maybe sometimes a good thing. Everybody got something. If somebody didn't get this, they got that, and back and forth and up and down. So I think it was a great negotiation. That's why it's called negotiations, and it worked out great. And for the most part, down the whole line, Waste Management does a terrific job with what they do here in our community. So we appreciate it so much. Any other questions?
I had a comment.
Okay, pardon me.
Your lawyer had another
attorney?
comment. Yes, sir.
Got something
Sorry
to say?
about that. Yes, sir.
We're not taking any action today?
I'm not. We're not.
Okay,
We're
go
not.
ahead, Jeff.
And Mr. Martinelli, last time, I think one of the last times you and I spoke was over at district court. We were involved in some litigation at that time because we had refused to give a business license to another vendor here in town. And because of that experience, I hope you'll understand when I advise my client that as far as number 5 goes, not to issue any further business licenses, I probably will be advising against that. So, no.
I understand your position. I mean, we're not asking that that we ink something in writing that's illegal. It's just for purposes of enforcement, for purposes of wear and tear on your streets. You want to know, do you want 50 haulers here, or do you want 10 or so that are already here? That was our intent. But we don't want to. We're not proposing anything that's illegal, and if it's
I
not
understand.
permissible,
You never would. I would never accuse you of doing that.
I understand.
So,
Go ahead.
but you are suggesting that that clause is illegal?
I'm just saying that we don't need to buy more litigation, and we didn't fare so well on that last lawsuit. So I kind of learned my lesson that it's not a good idea to try and do that.
Fool me once.
Yeah.
I think, Mr. Mayor, from our purposes, if the term is an issue, then we need some guidance from you as to what you want it to be, because we modeled it based on, because the intent at the time was the council wanted to see the least amount of increase impact to the residential consumer. So we modeled it based on 13 years. So if there's something less that we're going to have to go back and remodel it and see what the rate structure would look like.
Financial impacts might be.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Lawson.
Well, based on the mayor and based on the fact we're opening this up, you know what, now I don't have a problem with the time limit. So if there's something new and exciting comes out, I'm sure we'll all sit down in a room and make it happen. So
Yeah,
I'm okay with the term at that, just with that caveat that we can sit down and find a way to work through some other ways to recycle possibly and put our community on the map.
When we sit down with Mr. Adams and his staff, we can come up with something. I mean, I'm not a legal scholar, so I can't profess. I mean, I do a lot of contracts, but if there's something we need to write that says exactly what you just said, we can do that.
I think we're all adults here and we can figure this out. Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kind of going back and forth here, hearing what different people have said, one of the things that my father told me when I was growing on up is that there's two things in life that you can't escape: death and taxes. I've been able to escape both of those in some portion of my life at one time. But I have to go back and tell him for his 85th birthday that he's wrong. There's three things now that you can't escape: is death, taxes, and waste management charge fees for your trash, because it's always going to come around. It's always there. And I understand that you put your modeling at 13 years. It's a long time to be doing your modeling on out there. And I would say that, it would really challenge those numbers as being effective. What I would do as a compromise is keep the existing franchise agreement, but take away one of the options, one of the 5-year period, and go to 8 more years on our existing agreement, and then a 5-year option to negotiate it. And that gives you some room to go ahead and work with, 8 years on out. And then, the city council can review that in 5 years, or 8 years, and say if we want to go with a 5-year extension. As far as I know, we've never, as a council, ever disagreed with an extension for a franchise agreement that's come in front of us. Even though franchise agreements are quickly becoming a thing of the past, they're becoming an obsolete vessel to be using. So I would support going with the removing one of the 5-year extensions and just making an 8-year out. So we'd be at 23 that the contract will go to, but we'd give you the 5-year extension to 2028. And I think that would be a very reasonable thing to do. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Charlene.
Dan, I just had a question. Currently, if we kept what we have currently, in 3 years, do we sit down and look at the next 2 5-year periods? Do we sit in 3 years, or do we?
The contract calls for giving notice to the franchisee 6 months prior to expiration. So we would schedule an item, ask whether you wanted to go forward, and pick up that option and keep services as they were, renegotiate whatever you may do, or, in other circumstances, choose to test the market.
And that would be 3 years from now. We
Correct.
make that decision to do the first 5 years.
Correct.
And then you make the second decision 5 years later for the next 5 years.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, before we take any action or motions, I have somebody who wants to make public comment. Mike Draper, come on down.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Mike Draper. I own a company here in Reno and Sparks called Draper Strategies, and I'm here today representing Nevada Recycling and Salvage and Green Solutions Recycling. To follow up on that email that I sent and to several of the meetings that I've had with members of this council, our concern simply has been any kind of impacts on our business. Obviously, we're the next largest provider of commercial recycling services in the city. and we wanted to make sure that the impacts of this franchise agreement and the amendment to this franchise agreement were minimal or mitigated on our business. And so the question about the compactors was simply because we were time and again, and we've met with Mr. Marin several times, and the conversation has been that this was a residential amendment. So we were confused when we saw the compactor rates. We wanted to simply clarify what the purpose of that rate. It makes complete sense to us, as well as even the term. Listening to this council, listening to the discussion with representatives from Waste Management, we understand the reasoning for that. As long as that's not impacting commercial recycling and the ability of this council or our business to compete for commercial recycling going forward, as well as to potentially, as indicated in that email, potentially come into an agreement or develop an agreement with the city for a commercial recycling franchise agreement or something like that, then we have no problems with that as well. So I just wanted to clarify the intent of the email. I appreciate Mr. Mayor, you clarifying that, and Mr. Martinelli clarifying that as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, so looking for direction, right, Mr. Driscoll? Need a form of a motion where you'd like to see us go? Is that what you're looking for?
Yes, we'd like to get to the fine points so we can have a final deal brought back before the council.
Somebody ready to make a motion? Mr. Smith is. Go ahead.
Okay, and I just wanted to say that 6 or 7 years ago, we gave them a 10-year franchise agreement with 2 5-year options, so we're not out of line on what we're doing here. We're just continuing what we're doing with another 10 years. So I move to direct the city manager to move forward with negotiating an amendment to the franchise agreement with Waste Management as discussed and return that amendment to the city council for discussion and possible approval.
Mr. Lawson.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Smith, seconded by Mr. Lawson, to go ahead as recommended by staff. Is that correct, Mr. Smith?
Mm-hmm.
Questions, Ms. Ratty?
Well, first of all, I'm downright giddy.
Downright giddy?
There goes your yogurt cups are going to be taken
My
care of.
yogurt cups are finally going to get recycled. It's so exciting. And the yogurt cups of all those people who have been contacting me for all these years. So I'm very excited about that. I would like to see if the motioners would consider direction to staff to review item 5, commercial services for additional licenses, with which the city attorney has expressed some concern about the legal implications, and Mr. Martinelli expressed some willingness to look at getting that written in so that it is not putting us in legal jeopardy. So.
Well, and I didn't put that in the motion because Mr. Adams is going to let us know, and I thought that would include whether it's legal or not. If it's not legal, it won't be in there.
From my perspective, we're taking your collective comments today, and we will hammer out the final T's and C's on this thing and bring you back an agreement that hopefully addresses the majority of your concerns.
Right, and I think my motion addresses just do the contract or whatever's been negotiated, and then if it's illegal, that part will be
I'm
eliminated.
comfortable with that. And then if I could also, then if that's the way we're going, I would love to see what the rate would be if we did a shorter term contract. My little bit of heartburn, I can get there, but my little bit of heartburn is, if we do this today and somebody replaces me a year in a couple months, they don't get a chance to talk about recycling at all for the entirety of their term, and I have just a little bit of heartburn over that. So if it's cost prohibitive, it's cost prohibitive, but I'd like to see what Mr. Schmidt's 8-year term with 2 5-year extensions looks like.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Everyone understand the motion? Having said that, please vote. Passes unanimously. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, everything. Even Mr. Barrett had a lot of work here. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. Okay, let's move on to 10.1, public hearing, discussion, and possible approval of a bargaining agreement between the City of Sparks and the Operating Engineers Local 3 Supervisory Unit. Ms. Severson.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Chris Severson, Administrative Services Director. You have before you 2 bargaining agreements, the Operating Engineers Non-Supervisory and Supervisory. Negotiations began in early 2015 and concluded recently with the bargaining agreements you have before you. They are 2-year agreements and were presented on July 27th, but were tabled until today for full council review. Elements of the agreements include a 3% cost of living increase effective the first complete pay period following July 1st, 2015, and a 2% cost of living increase effective the first full pay period following July 1st, 2016. The union agreed to make a concession of 1% of the cost of living increase in exchange for paid time spent in union activity. The bargaining team presented this option as we believe, based on the estimated hours spent in union activities, to be less than the cost of a 1% pay increase. The city and the union agreed to track all hours to ensure that the hours spent would not exceed the equivalent of 1% of salary and salary-driven benefits. This is allowed under NRS Section 288, Section 1, which provides, a local government employer may agree to provide leave to any of its employees for time spent by the employee in performing union duties or providing services for an employee organization if the full cost of such leave is paid or reimbursed by the employee organization or is offset by the value of concessions made by the organization. At the City Council meeting of July 27, 2015, questions were raised regarding the practice of paying union time and if that was consistent with law. As stated, the law does allow for this if an equivalent concession is made. The union and the city have had additional discussions and have agreed that the bargaining agreements presented are the option that will be most beneficial to both units in administration and hard costs. Should the City Council wish to approve an amended contract granting the full 3% cost of living and requiring all union time to be unpaid or require an employee to utilize other accrued leave time, such as annual leave, personal leave, or compensatory time, both the union and the city have agreed to amended language, and an amended contract reflecting that has been prepared. Being sensitive to posting requirements and the public noticing, if this would require us to come back with a brand new contract, we are prepared to come back before you on August 24th if we cannot make the amending language today. So those are two alternatives presented to you today, and I'm prepared to answer any questions.
Okay, we have, sounds like we have a couple of options there. Mr. Lawson?
So the second option is what, Chris?
The second option is to implement a 3% cost of living increase in 2015, a 2% cost of living increase 2016, and the union members would be required to use some other type of paid time, such as annual leave or unpaid time for time spent in union activities.
And I like that option better. And I actually, and to the point where I would say 3% and 3%, because I know they're way behind, or they have been behind, and this will bring them up. But I really want to treat all the unions the same. So police and fire don't negotiate on company time, as it were. I think it should be the same for OE3.
Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you. I think you've answered my question, but I will just go ahead and go a little bit farther here. Of all this is the last contracts coming forward with the union.
Yes, sir.
And so far, every union has been a 2 and 2.
No, sir. The police contracts were different.
That was a lieutenant.
All three were different.
All three of them.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so
they allowed for a market adjustment. I apologize, I didn't bring the exact numbers, but they are getting in excess of 2%. They're getting more than 3.
They're getting more than 3.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any more? Charlene? Ms. Bybee?
I like this language better. I'm more comfortable with. I know, and I have a copy of the NRS and the changes that the legislature passed, and it is within the ability of the concession that we could, give them the extra 1% that could be used for union work. Totally permissible, which I appreciate that language, knowing that it is okay if we did that. But I'm much more comfortable with giving them the 3% and other union work being done on other forms of leave, like the other unions are doing. And I really feel it's important that we get a contract passed, that we get this union caught up with what they need to be and give them a good contract, and I fully support the new option. Thank you.
Thank you. My only question is, The agenda item had to be brought back exactly as written because it was tabled, so not a new item. I would ask, I don't want to get in any trouble with legal, so if Mr. Adams, you believe that it is cleaner to bring forward a new contract rather than have an amended language, we could do that on the 24th of August, or if it's permissible to have amended language, we could do that today.
The whole purpose of tabling the matter, especially with Councilman Lawson's remarks last time, that it should be presented before the entire City Council, and because the proposed contract was in fact amended and changed, then pursuant to our open meeting law, I would be more comfortable if you brought it back on the 24th. Now, that being said, is there anything in there now that you might have to tweak further to make something retroactive? In other words, were you anticipating having it approved 2 weeks ago, and are any benefits being stayed or held in abeyance because of this action?
Yes, we had anticipated it being approved the first complete pay period following July 1st.
Mm-hmm.
So we are already one pay period behind. Should we table it, we would be required to pay 2 weeks retroactive.
Yeah, okay, as long as that's understood by the council. I mean,
2 pay periods retroactive.
We don't want to create any grief through our delay, and because of the open meeting law.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, and thank you for asking.
You're welcome. Should have asked maybe before today.
Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to follow up your comments. You said that you wanted to have a full council meeting, and that's not happening on August the 24th. That's only going to be, then the next council meeting would determine that the full body's going to be here is October the 19th. I'm comfortable with our colleagues working the three that are going to be here on the 24th to make that decision, to bring the amended contract forward and make that decision.
Councilman Lawson's request that it ultimately be heard before the full council. Okay. I didn't mean to intimate that this could only be heard by the full council.
Misinterpreted. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, I guess.
Go ahead.
So, to clarify the legal, today we cannot, is it just cleaner if we bring it back because of public meeting law, because we're making an amendment to the originally posted contract, that it's preferable to wait 2 weeks instead of we can't make a decision today?
The changes contained in the contract today were not the same, was not in the same form as that originally agendized 2 weeks ago. Okay. Councilman Lawson asked that this be tabled so that the entire City Council could then review the contract and go over it. What you did today was essentially change what was originally agendized, and because you've deliberated on that, I think it would be cleaner to do it in the next meeting. Now, legally speaking, if you approved it today, would we go down the tubes and get in trouble with the Attorney General? Probably not, but the question posed to me was, would I be more comfortable? And usually on these matters, I try to be a little more conservative in my advice.
Thank you.
Mr. Lawson.
So can we give direction to staff and vote on that?
Alternative number 3 in the agenda item says not to approve the contract and direct staff to other options. So I believe you do have the authority to do that.
That's what I'm thinking. And
Public comment, though?
Okay, any more questions from the council? Then I'll open up public comment. Okay. Okay, this is public comment period, so I'll open up to the public. Mr. Fullerton? Scott Fullerton. Yes. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you. For the record, Scott Fullerton, Operating Engineers. One thing I'd like to point out in the contract that may help you on your decision today is we have provisions in the contract that are already in existence that would allow this contract to be adjusted through other options, through an MOU down the road. That would give you the option to vote on the bulk of this contract and yet open it up for smaller items, which in this case, it appears we only have one item that is of concern. So for the membership or the employees, take it forward. Also for the city's own management of their business, there's a lot of things they have to put in place already, as opposed to going back. That would help everybody in the overall picture there. And then we could sit down through short meetings and handle the one item that is of concern.
That is, I guess, a different alternative, Mr. Adams. We would approve the contract as, Scott, if I may, approve the contract item today and then bring forward on the 24th an MOU to that contract granting the 1% increase and changing the paid union time.
That's fine with me. It gets back to our written on the feral cat deal where we could approve the agenda item and then amend it down the road after a first and second reading. So this is no different than that. That's fine with me, folks, because you're essentially approving what was presented in the original agenda item today. And then, just like anything else, any other contract, any other ordinance, you can amend it. And so what I'm hearing you say is that we're going to go ahead and amend it on the 24th.
But I was really trying to stay away from the feral cat thing.
I don't blame you.
I didn't want that. No.
It permeates everything. You're in our cat box now.
Okay, that's Scott. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Anyone else in the public? Okay, seeing no more further public comment, I'll bring it back to council for action. Ms. Ratty.
So I guess my question is really one of practicality. We're talking about a 2-week delay administratively, more in the machinations of getting it into payroll and all those sorts of things. Does 2 weeks allow you really to do anything more than if we just approved it or we just heard it and took action 2 weeks from now?
I would defer to finance. They're the ones that really
because
have to do that.
The one outstanding item that we have is pay.
It would mean that they would put an increase now, have 2 weeks of retro, and then put in another increase and do more retro.
Right.
Right?
That's the way I understand it. Jeff Holmes, kind of financial services director for the record. Either way, we're after the fact, so we're going to look at a retro. So we're either going to do one retro or two. Your discretion. I mean, we'll get it done either way. But from an administrative standpoint, we're already kind of beyond the point of ease. So
no way to sugarcoat it.
We'll get it done.
Mr. Schmidt.
That's my concern here is that, I understand the concept of wanting to get the contract on over, but you're going to go, as soon as you say yes or no to this contract, you're going to go do your math and you're going to do a retro check to everybody, and then in 2 weeks we're going to come back and potentially screw that all up for you, and you get to start all over again.
Well, we wouldn't start all over again. It would just be an add-on.
You would do it again.
You would do it again.
Do it a second time. And if
we
you
would
wait 2 weeks, you're going to do it
once. Right.
So I think by taking this action, and we're postponing everything for 2 weeks, and we can do everything one time.
Ms. Bybee.
I think I probably would prefer that because today we would have to, if we passed it today, it would be with the stipulation that MOE would happen and that we were comfortable with that piece that we're not comfortable with being resolved in 2 weeks. I guess, too, there are only going to be 3 of us at the next meeting, so my concern, too, is making sure we're all on the same page so that we get this accomplished so we don't wind up having to table again and move it farther down the road. So that is a concern with only 3 members at the next meeting. Just a thought.
Mr. Lawson.
Try a motion?
Absolutely.
So I'm going to direct staff to go back to talk to the unions, and we're looking at a 3% increase and a 3% increase. And that's what they get. Then no company time for union business.
Do you have a second, Ms. Ratty?
Second.
Discussion? One question I have is no union activity for them on company time. What about when they have to meet with staff? So that means you guys have to work on time other than company time.
That's
Is that
true.
not correct? So
that's correct.
That's where I'm coming from down the line with what this whole deal is. We could have solved that in the first place with the original deal. But now you guys are going to have to work. But you're on paid monthly time, so you won't have to get overtime or anything, right?
That's correct.
I was anticipating something when we're meeting with the unions and with staff is just like the police and fire, that they come in, we pay them for up to, how many members was it, 5 or 10 members could be there to talk with you during
It
company
varies,
time?
sure.
Yeah, but that's during we actually can pay them on that time.
With police and fire, it is either unpaid or they have to use their own time. It's no longer city time.
Okay. So, yeah, I just want it to be consistent is what I'm after.
Ms. Bybee.
Okay, Mr. Lawson, I need clarification because the contract that you're giving us is 3%, 2%, 2%.
That's correct.
Correct? And you're proposing 3%, 3%?
It's 3, I'm sorry, it's 3 and 2. It's not
3
3,
and 2,
2
I'm
and 2.
sorry.
It's 3
and 2, but you are proposing not just the 3%, you're asking for another percentage added to the second year. So that's what your proposal is, the motion
Which is an additional about $120,000 to what is currently.
In my mind, it's $120,000. Yeah, it's real money, but in this particular case, these guys have been very good to the city and taken concessions, and I think it's time they get caught up a little bit.
I just want to be clear, because I'm not saying I oppose it, but I just want to make clear that we're looking at a difference than what you're proposing to us today than the original contract. So it's adding another percentage.
That's
to the
correct.
second year also is what the motion is.
That's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Driscoll.
Just to be clear, Mr. Mayor, on the process, you have 2 contracts here, even though we're talking about them exactly the same. You are required to have a public hearing on both. So as you're concluding this discussion on the first contract, that's fine. You will need to open up public hearing on the second contract and have a separate motion for that contract as well. So that's just cleaning up the process for you. Thank you.
Okay, everyone understand the motion? All right, please vote. Passes unanimously. Good job. 10.2, public hearing, discussion, possible approval of a bargaining agreement, AC 5185, between the City of Sparks and the Operating Engineers Non-Supervisory Unit. Go ahead.
I would.
Can I save you some time and I'll make a
yes,
motion?
Yes, you may. I'm
Okay.
Chris Severson, Administrative Services Director, for the record.
Okay, any questions? Seeing no questions, anyone out there want to speak on this in the public? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council for action. Mr. Lawson.
I'd like to make a motion to give this bargaining group a 3% and a 3% for the contract term.
Do you have a second? Ms. Ratty.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Lawson, seconded by Councilwoman Ratty to approve agreement AC 5185 between the City of Sparks and the Operating Engineers. Questions, Ms. Bybee?
Okay, just to be clear, because now I'm really confused. On the union part of it then, the 1% will be, is a moot point because they will be using, so for both groups, for union work, they will be using personal time and just like the other union groups do.
That's correct.
Okay, just wanted to be clear. Thank you.
That's how we will write the bargaining
Okay, any
agreement.
other questions? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys, for being here. Appreciate it. Okay, 11.1, public hearing and possible action on a request for tentative and final approval of an amendment to the Sparks Galleria Plan Development Handbook to allow for 18 fueling positions in an existing 12 nozzle service station. That's going to be tough, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead, Miss. Who are you? I can't see without my glasses on.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mayor Martini and Council. I'm Karen Melby, Senior Planner. Before you today is a consideration and possible action on a request for a tentative and final amendment to the Sparks Galleria Plan Development Handbook. This handbook has right now in it a stipulation of a restriction of 12 nozzles, and they are asking to increase that to 18 fueling positions. This is in the Sparks Galleria Sparks Galleria Plan Development. And this actual request particularly pertains to the Costco property. As you can see here, this is Galleria Parkway and Pyramid Highway. They're out to, here's Pyramid Highway, and this is Galleria Parkway. The plan development is this whole area here. The Sparks Galleria Plan Development was approved by City Council in June 2004. There have been two other amendments to the one in 2006 and one in 2008. This is the third request of amendment. The existing Costco service station has 3 islands with 6 dispensers for a total of 12 nozzles. This request is a tentative and final approval of the handbook amendment. The proposed amendment is minor in scope and does not affect the integrity of the overall plan development or the commercial or residential of this plan development. Costco proposes to add an additional dispenser, each with 2 vehicle fueling positions to each of the 3 existing fueling islands. This will result in an additional of 6 fueling positions, or a total of 18. The land use table has a restriction that restricts it to 12 nozzles. And what we're proposing is to allow 18 fueling positions. And then you'll notice here that this is only for the position, this is the area where the Costco is. So only the Costco could have this 18 fueling positions. If there would be another a gas station that would open in the Sparks Galleria, they would be restricted to the 12 nozzles. The addressing the PD findings, this amendment only affects the Costco service station and does not change the allowed uses, nor does it change the nature of the plan development. This amendment facilitates the Costco service station to expand their existing operation to better serve their customers by providing additional fueling options, because they're going to provide diesel. That's why they're adding 2 nozzles to each existing pump. And it will decrease the wait time for the customers now. The adding of the fueling positions at the Costco station does not change or depart from the zoning regulations, nor does it change the density of the plan development, nor does it expand though they will be expanding the canopy, because they're going to add on the 3 new fueling stations, they will be adding the canopy over those stations. But in staff's opinion, that doesn't change the coverage of the property. The expansion of the gas station does not affect the existing landscaping nor the open space and pedestrian or vehicular circulation of the site. Staff finds the proposed amendment complies with these PD findings. To expedite the review of this minor amendment, the applicant is requesting that you also look at this as a final handbook approval. Based on the criteria and the NRS, the staff is of opinion that this amendment is in substantial compliance with the tentatively approved plan and the final handbook. It does not vary the proposed gross residential density. It does not vary the proposed ratio of residential to non-residential uses. It does not reduce the amount of open space. There is no increase in the floor area, though the canopy, as I mentioned, will be increased. There is no increase in the total ground coverage by buildings, nor will there be a substantial change in any heights of buildings in this because of this amendment. There are no changes in the final handbook based on from what was in the tentative handbook. Therefore, it's the staff's opinion that the final draft for the Sparks Galleria plan development does not substantially vary from these 5 criteria as outlined in the NRS and conforms to the tentative handbook. Due to this fact, and that this request is an amendment to a recorded final handbook, staff determines this amendment should be reviewed as a public hearing. Staff and Planning Commission recommend approval of the Plan Development Handbook amendments. This concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Okay, seeing no questions, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone in the public like to speak to this particular item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council for questions or action. Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to approve this item or make a motion to approve, but I actually want to go ahead and disapprove it because I think that this is something that is really overreaching on our part. If Costco came in with a business plan that they could put 180 gas nozzles on out there, why wouldn't we do it? their business plan says they can go ahead and pump that much gas, why wouldn't it be a better service to the thing? So I think this is just something that's overreaching when we put these plans together on just exactly how many gas pumps a customer can go and have. But they've asked for 18. If they had asked for 180, I would have given it to them, because I think that's their business model dictates that. So I move to approve the tentative and final amendment of the Sparks Galleria Plan Development Handbook associated with PCN 15025, adopting findings PT1 through PT21, and the facts supporting these findings is set forth in staff report.
Ms. Bybee.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Schmidt, seconded by Ms. Bybee to approve the agenda items outlined by staff. Any questions? Did I hear somebody had a question now? Okay. Okay, seeing no questions, please vote. Passes unanimously. Thanks, Karen. Close our session, Steve. Okay, comments from the public. I have one card from Deborah Banks. Is she still here? You waited us out, Deborah.
Unfortunately, like a feral cat.
You're tough.
Sorry, I wasn't able to be here early, but I worked.
That's quite all right.
And I will keep my comments and send you my letter later. Okay. I'm here about the Bill 2693, of course. I know it was first reading only and can't say anything, but I am concerned about the inclusion of feral cats as a high-risk species in your list of prohibited practice. I would ask that you also remove feral cats from this list, as well as the paragraph when you consider it at the second reading, and give us enough time so everybody can come comment. So everybody can be here, all the council members. I do ask that you remove that at the second reading. Anyway, my concerns, some are ethical and others are financial. And I know you can't answer me now, but I would like an answer, or, answers at some point. One, who is going to police this prohibited practice of, feral cats? Are you planning on having neighbors and family members turn in people who are compassionate and like having outdoor fixed feral cats, keeping the mice population down? I know I do. They've caught several mice. Who is going to pay for the monitoring? How are you going to determine whether a cat is feral or an outside cat? Cats are allowed to roam free in Nevada. Are you ready to pay for lawsuits that owners will bring against you for the destruction of their pets should one get caught up in a net? If you allow this, who is going to pay for the trapping and killing of feral cats? Washoe County Regional Animal Services doesn't have the facilities to manage mass killings of cats, so something will have to be built. Who will pay for something that could cost upwards of $1 million to build? Do you realize that one cat and her kittens can have perhaps as many 100 cats in a year, providing all kittens survive to maturity? Who is going to trap all these cats if you do away with the TNRM? Washoe County has a system in place to work with the situation. Why are you trying to destroy something that works? It's in Ordinance 1556 of the Animal Code about feral cat colonies and their caretakers. Are you ready for lawsuits against you for violating Washoe County Animal Code? Do you really want to kill cats who, through no fault of their own, found themselves outside with no protection? Do you really think this will stop the abandonment of animals? It won't. Do you really want to go backwards in time and become known as a regressive city? Currently, the feral cat colonies cost the taxpayers of Washoe County nothing. Are you willing to go to voters of Sparks and ask for a tax increase to cover these increased costs? Can we not all work together to solve an issue without killing animals? Please do not let a small group of people convince you to kill cats. And one clarification, TNRM is the official designation of trap, neuter, and release. It actually means trap, neuter, return, and monitor. And there's where we could do better. We could do the monitoring and help these cats, help the wildlife, and help people. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Comments from the city council and city manager?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I could ask for
Deborah, yeah, I was going to ask.
a copy of the testimony so we can answer your questions.
So, yeah, so we can answer your questions.
Great. I'll send you.
I wasn't able to keep up. I'm sorry.
Okay, comments from the city council, city manager? No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes. So I'd like to ask staff to look into whether or not there is with giving the city attorney's office more notice, a path forward to separate out the feral cat issue from the rest of the zoning code so that we could move forward on the zoning code more quickly than October 12th. Understanding that we took action today, but now there's some time between now and the August 24th meeting, and so I'd like us to look into that possibility.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, seeing no further business, we are adjourned. Go ahead, you had something?